G'day, and welcome to this special Fair Dinkum True Blue Aussie edition of Bricks by Dave, where we're going to have a look at the latest in the Lego Postcard series, Australia, or if you want to say it like a Ridgi didge, Ocker, Australia. Set number 40651. This is in the Lego Creator series. It's age for 7+. Says Australia Postcard there, and a bit of a look at what it looks like. The back of the box shows a bit more detail of some of the things that are included on the postcard, with the world map there showing where Australia is right down the bottom here, and an arrow pointing at smack bang in the middle of outback Australia. I was a bit unsure about this postcard when I first laid my eyes on it, which I'll go into later, but first let's have a Captain Cook at the finished build. Starting on the left, we have a very familiar sight in rural Australia with the old steel windmill, a must for pumping water for stock and the homestead, and when you blow on it, like so, it does actually work. That's a pretty cool feature. I don't know if any of the other postcards have any actual moving parts on them. In front of the windmill we have a few bushes with some wildflowers, which can be quite spectacular in the outback during wildflower season. As we move on to the right here, we have the outhouse Dunny. That's a toilet, or often referred to as the thunderbox. This is where you'll find the deadly redback spider, although it's not as deadly as most people think. There's only been one person die in Australia of a redback spider bite since the 1950s. The bite can be a bit painful. Anyway, moving on. Up the top we have the familiar Australian airline Qantas, more affectionately known as the Flying Kangaroo, as it has a white kangaroo on that red tail fin there normally in flight or hopping. These fly all over Australia, so if you look up in the sky and you see a plane, there's a pretty good chance it's a Qantas one. Right in the middle there we have a typical outback homestead with its very wide veranda and corrugated iron roof. This one has obviously had its roof renovated recently, as they're not usually as shiny as that one, but it's a good use of the grills to try and represent the corrugations in the iron roof. They've got a nice wide veranda on it, which is essential in the outback because you want to keep the sun off of the house. It usually goes all the way around the sides there, and as you can see here, they've used the hinge plates to get that angle on it, which was a good effect. And the pillars there look like concrete pillars, although they would generally just be wooden ones. The sticker on the door of the shack and the outhouse, as I just said, they're both stickers, not prints. Next to the homestead we have a nice big water tank there, which is essential for catching the rain off of the roof when it does rain. If you don't get plenty of water in the outback, you might find yourself as dry as a Dead Dingo's donga. Then here we have the eucalyptus tree, or more commonly referred to as a gum tree. Give me a home amongst the gum trees, with lots of plum trees, a sheep or two or a kangaroo. Anyway, that's enough of my singing. There are over 700 species of these down under. Crikey! There are only 15 species found naturally outside of Oz, and of those, only 9 are exclusively non-Australian. They range a lot in colour, from almost totally white, they're known as ghost gums, to a rainbow gum, which has a virtual rainbow of colours on it. This one that they've depicted here is one of the more commonly seen ones around, and they do actually have this sort of sandy coloured bark with grey bits on it like that. And the use of the sand green for the leaves is very good. When the leaves first come out, they're generally a reddy colour, but they do go quite sandy like that, and when you rub them they have a very strong eucalyptus smell, obviously. Below the eucalyptus we have some water down there to represent a billabong. Watch out for the crocs, mate. And in front of that we have a very familiar scene with the Beware of Kangaroo sign. These usually have a distance at the bottom of them, or it will say next 50 kilometres. I've seen some that have said next 500 kilometres. The reason you need these is because if one of them jumps out in front of you and they just appear out of nowhere at times and you hit it with your car, it can do a hell of a lot of damage. In the top of the tree here we have the cockatoo as it's described in the instructions. It is actually a sulphur crested cockatoo, which you can tell by the yellow colour on its crest there. It's a reasonable representation of the bird. I've moved the wing a little bit there because the instructions show it straight up and down. like that, and it just doesn't look quite right that way, so move it that way a little. Lost a leaf off the tree. And the other one there pointing straight back is something they do. They'll stand on a branch and hold one wing out just to try and cool down a little bit. This is done in force perspective, obviously, because the cockatoos aren't that big compared to the homestead. Right at the front there we have the little plaque, Australia, on a wooden board with some gum tree leaves around it. Now, I saw what Holly said about the postcard on Just Too Good's review of this, and I don't want to start a blue with you, Holly, because I love your channel and you've got a bigger clone army than me, but you can find all these things through all of outback Australia. Granted, the outhouse and the tin roof shack there are becoming less common because we stopped making them like that donkeys years ago, but they are still out there, and not just on the west coast. We may have more here, but that's just because we're the biggest state. As for gum trees, you'll find them everywhere in Australia. As I said, there's 700 different species of them, so they are just absolutely everywhere, including in the suburbs. As for the sulphur-crested cockatoo, that's actually a native to north and east of Australia. So if anything, it more represents the east coast or the north. But getting back to the real crux of the problem here, most of these things, as the Lego site says, and I'll quote, bring the sight of the Australian outback to life with this impressive 3D buildable Australia postcard 40651. This brilliant gift features some of the outback's most famous sights, including a shed, windmill, eucalyptus tree, desert flowers, and a cockatoo. It has already mentioned the outback twice and goes on to mention it another 2 times, so why call it Australia instead of Outback Australia? All the other postcards they've made have been of cities, and I guess since they've already made the big Sydney Opera House, and they did the Sydney Opera House in the Architect series, they didn't want to do Sydney again, and there's not a lot else outside of Sydney that would be easily recognisable to people outside of Australia. But why call it Australia instead of calling it Outback Australia when it clearly represents, as they said, Outback Australia? Anyway, that's enough of that. Apart from my gripe about the naming of this postcard, I think they've done a bloody good job of representing Outback Australia. I mean, it must have been flaming hard to try and represent a whole country as big as Australia in one little postcard like this. The build itself was pretty good. The back part of it was a little on the boring side because it's just basically laying the blue plates row upon row, with the exception of the odd snot block here and there to attach the clouds, the plane and the eucalyptus tree. But they've captured the beautiful blue skies that we all enjoy down under, the scorched red earth. I love a sunburnt country. They've got a few iconic features like the windmill, the outhouse, Dunny, the shed there, the eucalyptus tree, beautiful wildflowers, which are spectacular in wildflower season, and of course a cockatoo. So if you want to get your mitts on this and you've collected the other postcards, you're definitely going to want to get this one, because there's something oddly satisfying about blowing on that windmill and making that spin around. And if you're an Aussie, we're coming up to Australia Day on the 26th of January, so you're definitely going to want to grab hold of this one. You can't get these from Kmart or Walmart or Target or anywhere like that. They're only available in the Lego store. And as always, have a good one.